with Hydro Wellness Lab, the podcast where real people share the real stories behind getting their lives, their bodies, and their mindsets back on track. I'm your host, Bretton Hunt, and in every episode, we dive into powerful conversations with athletes, weekend warriors, health and wellness professionals, and everyday people who refuse to settle. These are the breakthroughs, the setbacks, the mindset shifts, the moments that get us unstuck. Today, I'm joined by someone who has built a ton of winning football programs and just been a huge inspiration to a lot of young men. This is Coach Scott Hare. He's currently the head coach at Crismon High School in Arizona in Quinn Creek. Coach Hare has led many programs to multiple state championships. Um, famous down here in Gilbert area for taking the skeet to back-to-back state championships in 2019 and 2020, I believe. He's got his doctorate now in sports leadership. He's all about helping young men just achieve their highest potential. So, Coach Hare, thank you for joining us and welcome on set.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Hey, so for people who don't know you, your full coaching journey and all that, could you give us like a little background of how you got into football, how you got into coaching, how has football been a part of your life?
Yeah, well, I grew up on a high school football field. My dad was a head high school coach, and I was a ball boy and water boy pretty much throughout my entire childhood. There was about 4 Halloweens in a row where I dressed up as a high school football coach when I was a kid, and my grandfather actually was the head coach also. They were actually in rival schools in the same leagues. Made Thanksgiving kind of an interesting thing in our house. But yeah, so I always wanted to be a high school football coach. That's really all I ever wanted. Is in high school, I played 3 sports. I was a gym rat. But I knew I was going to coach at some point in time. And then even college football, I didn't see myself as a college football player. I really wasn't. I'd kind of maximized my ability there in high school when my gifts were. But really, I had some good mentors that told me, if you really want to coach, you got to go at least get in the fraternity. So I got involved with college football from the standpoint of played on a couple teams and then got to coach a little bit. But it really led to my first job, which was I had a high school job at 23 years old. So, which is really what I wanted. And I've been able to do that ever since. So I've just been blessed to do what really was my dream from really the time that I stepped on a field. Loved the smell of the grass. I miss the fact that we're not playing on as much regular grass as we used to
Sure.
play on. Crismon still has natural grass, which I'm excited about. So but I can still smell that grass at Carmel High School when I was a kid, and just the memories that brings back to what I wanted to do, and I've been lucky enough to be able to do it.
That's awesome. So you've coached in multiple states, California, Nevada, Washington, Arizona,
Yeah.
all over the place. So looking back, what do you think was the moment that truly shaped you as a football coach? You mentioned you were 23 when you got your first head coaching job. What really like shaped you like who you are today?
Well, I don't really know if there was any specific one thing. I've been really blessed to be surrounded by some just incredible people in my journey. When I was a young coach, I needed the mentors. As a young 20-year-old, 23 head coach, obviously I leaned on my dad a little bit. I had great parents. But I had really good mentors too. Coach Young, Coach Miller, Coach Hancock, just people who really, lifted me up, kept me kind of moving in the right direction. I needed those people as a young coach. At 23, I was a little cocky to think that I kind of knew what I was doing. Now looking back on that, 23-year-old is crazy to think what I didn't know, but the people that were surrounding me made me believe what I was capable of doing. Really, more than anything, I would say what shaped who I am today was probably the failures of Spanish Springs. I was there for 8 years. It was good. Nobody would actually call it a failure. We were a good team, but we didn't overachieve. And so there was one school in particular, Reed, coached by Ernie Howard, who beat me all 8 years I was at Spanish Springs. And he won a couple titles, and he was a really good coach. But I think if it wasn't for Ernie kind of beating me the way he did for those 8 years, I don't know if I really would have evaluated what exactly how I coached. Up till that point, it was a lot about, the talent you have and uh, different schemes that we used and going to the clinics. And so I actually left Spanish Springs and I really kind of went more on a journey to figure out more about my coaching style and the way that I coach, not what I was coaching. Up till that point, it had been more what. My brother and I joined forces. My brother Corey uh, joined forces, and it was really a team effort between the two of us to really explore coaching and the process of coaching, the way we coached. And then what we were coaching really was secondary to how we did it. So I think that Spanish Springs to then moving down here to Arizona, really there was about a 5-year period there where I was going through my own schooling, working with my brother, and then really not wanting to be just the regular, this is the way everybody does it. I wanted to explore exactly what I thought was the right way to do it. And I think we've over the last, 10, 12 years, I think we've really been able to put our stamp on a more unorthodox way of doing things, but it's something we really believe in. So even though it's unorthodox to other people, there's a lot of ways I think people are doing things. And I look at them and go, the only reason you're doing it the way you're doing it is because this is how everybody does it. And so, I don't see it as orthodox. I see it as well researched. But that time in Spanish Springs really was really good for me because it made me evaluate the kind of coach I wanted to be.
That's awesome. So every successful coach, like you're saying right now, has moments where you have to reevaluate things that maybe you thought were working that aren't working out. Whether it's different personnel that comes in, it's a certain coaching style, or like you mentioned just now. So would you say, like, up there in Nevada, is that when maybe one of the first times you really felt kind of stuck as a head coach, like where you were looking to kind of break through as a coach and as, to continue on and get this journey that you're on?
Yeah, I think really I was definitely, once again, it's hard because I think from the outside looking in, we would have been considered a good program.
Mhm.
We had winning records most of the years I was there. We successful, made the playoffs, won a couple playoff games. So we looked successful. But I had taken over losing programs before I got to Nevada, and I felt my brother and we had overachieved. We had taken over a program that was 0-20, Anderson High School in Northern California, and they were really bad. But 3 years later, we're in the playoffs, and I thought we were overachieving. The one thing I looked at Spanish Springs is we were not overachieving. We were beating the schools we were supposed to be. We were losing to the schools we were supposed to lose to. And so I was stuck in the regards that I didn't really feel like I was progressing us forward. I was blaming more of the talent we didn't have. I was looking at, what other people did have and not really focusing on what I could get the most out of what I have. And so, once again, I think that the losses to Reed specifically and the way I was losing, I really, when I had to sit back and look at it, by the talent level really wasn't that much different. And so when the talent level is not that much different, you really have to look inward. Saw a coach that really most people had thought had arrived. I was 30 years old. I was the head coach of a school that was, 2,800 kids. We were at the top of the level in Nevada. We were a playoff team. We were solid. I think most people would have said, you've arrived as a head football coach. And I thought I had too. So really it was just the being stuck was the fact that I didn't really feel there was an overachievement in what we were doing. I just thought we were just kind of not going through the motions. We worked incredibly hard. I worked incredibly hard. I wanted to be successful, but it was the evaluation of asking myself, what does success look like? Is it just wins and losses? Is it championships? What does it look like? And for me, the word overachievement kept popping up in my head. I want to overachieve.
Mm.
And I definitely was not doing that at Spanish Springs. So I really had to evaluate the process. So yeah, there was definitely a stuckness feeling uh, I had to move. I literally had to physically move because I think that there was also there were a lot of people at Spanish Springs that didn't understand why I wanted to move, because it was so vastly different. And so literally I had to go to a different school, and came down here to Arizona. So that was, it was an interesting time, for my family, my young kids, my wife, and really, I'm very blessed at the fact that she was willing to make the adjustments for me to get unstuck, and to learn more about myself.
That's awesome. Yeah, my wife's my superpower. I couldn't do any of the stuff that I do now without her support. That's key for anyone, I think, to have a supportive spouse and family. So when you personally are going through something like this, and I'm sure this isn't the first time, that wasn't the first time, I'm sure you've experienced different adversities throughout your coaching career. What do you do personally to, if you're in a rut, if your team's in a rut, what do you do to get out of that rut?
Well, I have personal people that are people I lean on, people I've been able to talk to. Once again, my mentors have still been my mentors, over all these years, and those also kind of change and move over the years. You add more people in your circle, um, positive people that have really helped look after me when I call them. There are some, phenomenal people in my life that I'm able to work ideas through, and then I get real honest answers from. Obviously, my wife is my number one. I think that I don't do anything that doesn't, go through her first. But I mentioned my brother. I think that's a team effort. I think anytime you have a partner in what you're doing, yeah, my life partner is with my wife, and so we raise our kids together, and we go through this life together, and we're equally yoked in that. In my coaching football, it really is my partner is my brother. It's the two of us together, and I don't think a lot of coaches really have the partnership that I'm able to have with him. And so what that does is, I might feel stuck. He might have an idea. Well, I'm able to lean on that idea because I know it comes from a place where he's not trying to undercut me. He's not trying to take my job from me. You never really know the motives of some of the people that you're with. I have a very small coaching staff. I do that on purpose because the truth is, I don't know what everybody's intentions are. So I have to make sure the people on my coaching staff, the intentions are the right ones, that we're all moving in the direction together. So, I think for me, I've just had incredible people that I've been surrounded by that allow me to really lean on them when things aren't going well for me.
So like, that's awesome. So when you mentioned you came down from Nevada, looking for a new restart your coaching experience, and you ended up at Mesquite, and you took a well. First, you went to Mesa, yeah, and then you ended up at Mesquite. Mesquite at the time, I think, was kind of one of those programs. It was okay, not very good. And you came in and you won a state championship in 2018. Take me back to that season. What was that feeling like for you as a coach to just be on top of the mountain at that moment?
Yeah, that was the culmination of a lot of really positive things coming together at one time. I think that, we talk about winning titles and what that looks like. And I do think there was just so many things that kind of came together. One, the program might not have necessarily wins and losses, might not have been at the title contention quite yet. But the truth is the foundation was good. Before me was solid, and knows his football, and the kids knew some football, so that part was really really good. Obviously, we kind of revamped some things. I was also the athletic director before I took over, so I got to kind of watch. It's an interesting thing when you watch but have no actual say in what happens. You learn a lot. I probably got to learn more about that 2019 team in some ways watching the 2018 team from the sidelines with really no ability that wasn't my role at that time. But it allowed me to have a good base coming in that most coaches don't have. Most coaches don't have a base of knowledge of the players they're coaching before they really step on on the school grounds. Um, and then really, once again, we had talent, Ty Thompson and Andrew Morris and well, a bunch of other guys. I mean, I go through a bunch of names. Those are the ones most people know off the top of their head. But we really had a lot of guys that by the time we got to the playoffs, really were playing well together. And it was a season where once again, my brother and I did it together, brought in a very, very, very small staff. We only had 5 guys. My dad was on that staff
Oh,
too.
wow.
So it was my brother, my dad, and myself. And so, once again, you start talking about a closeness. There was zero friction or undercutting on the staff. Everything that we did, we may not have agreed with each other, and we don't all the time. But the truth is, the players would have never known that.
Mhm.
So we were all moving in one direction together. And so I think really that's what, when you talk about that 2019 team, it really is more than anything else. By the time we got to the playoffs, we all knew the road we were going. Practice together. We knew how to communicate together. The coaches knew how to kind of bounce ideas off of one another. And I just think it was a culmination of a lot of things coming together, from the players buying in and the coaches all understanding that, we're on a mission together and we're not going to throw things off by kind of, doing things our own way. We had to kind of do things one way. I don't think that came together a lot on the weekends and once again, a lot of disagreement goes into coming up with the decision that you're gonna make, but once we made that decision, we all then bought into it. And the playoffs, that 2019 run that was a special playoff run. We beat a couple teams that most people in fact, I don't think there was anybody in the press, not one, and I still have the clipping. So I don't think anybody can disagree with this, but there wasn't one press member that actually had us beating Cactus. And then most people had us getting beat by 14, 21 points by Desert Edge. So,
Mhm.
I think that not only were we pretty good at what we were doing at that time, but we were also beating opponents that were probably more talented than we were, and used to being in that setting. And were new to that environment. So it was it was just a season that everything came together.
That's awesome. I remember reading about that team in 2019, and then you went on and even after Ty Thompson and those guys left, you went off and won another one. Yeah.
The next year we did. Ty was still
Oh,
there
Ty
that
was,
year. After Ty left, we actually went to the semis,
that's right.
and we graduated most guys on that team in 21. We had kind of had to hit a reset button in kind of the way we did things, but Gerardo came in and threw for another 3,000 yards and went back to the semifinals, and so no, that was that 2021 team that went to the semis. You start talking about the way you develop programs and getting people to buy in.
Mhm.
The 2019 team kind of led through that process to get us to 21. But by the time we got to 21, it was a lot of fun because the groundwork had been laid and everybody was really kind of working in the same direction. So even though we kind of had a new group of guys and a new crop of talent, everybody jumped on board immediately. That 21 team was a lot of fun to coach.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think any program, regardless of the talent that you have, it all starts with the culture that the coach ultimately sets, right? And like you said, it was laid in 2019 with that team, and it propelled you guys into the 21 year and then further. So, and you mentioned that your way of coaching now is very maybe unorthodox to people that look in from the outside, right? So what is the first thing that's like non-negotiable for you and your coaching staff? You mentioned your brother, and then anyone that you come in that comes in with you on that staff. What's the first non-negotiable? Like this is what we do, and this is why we do it.
Well, from the standpoint of the players, we expect you to be on time and show up every day, work as hard as you can. I mean, those are really what I would say are, when I have my parent meeting or I meet with the guys, it's like, what are the rules? I don't have any rules. There's no rules on the board. We don't want a lot of transactional behaviors. We don't want a lot of, I'm the coach, you're the player, you do this because I told you so.
Mhm.
The truth is, we want them to understand why they're buying into what they're buying into. They're choosing to be there. So really the only transactional standards that I have where they have to do it, they have to show up every day on time and they have to work as hard as they can. Once they do those things, they're in. Those are really the only what I would call non-negotiables. You're not really going to hear a lot of sayings. I don't have any real sayings. I don't have anything that we kind of collectively brings us together. To me, it moves through. I want to figure out then the culture of the team. What kind of players are they? What kind of personalities are they? How can I then make them really just take the journey that they signed up to take? Hopefully I'm not forcing them to do anything because they want to be there. And I think that for me, one of the non-negotiables is that you just want to be there. I'm in this kind of world now where, transferring is normal. We
Right.
get a lot of transfers and kids are transferring out and transferring in. The truth of the matter is I've had almost no transfers out of my
Wow.
programs. Almost none. From Mesquite up in Washington, I was there for 2 years, and then now at Crismon. From the time that I've taken an actual team, now we don't know this yet at Crismon because this is going into year 2, but there haven't been any transfers. Mesquite, Washington up in Washington at Eastlake, and now we'll find out at Crismon if somebody transfers, but I haven't had any transfers out. The other thing is I don't recruit transfers in. Now, if you want to come on your own, uh, I'm not gonna, that's between you. But I'm not going around. I'm not trying. We don't have any people out trying to get people to come to our schools. Um, because I want guys that only want to be at our school. And I want you to believe in what you're getting a part of. To me, that neighborhood school is really what I cherish. I love that feel of this is our neighborhood, these are our kids, this is who lives around the school, and it's us against you. And so, while once again, this is a very normal world we're living in now, with everybody kind of just deciding where to go. And for me, my non-negotiable is that you love the team that you're playing for, that you understand that we're an organization and we're going to do this together,
Mhm.
and that you something that's greater than yourself. And so, really all I'm trying to do is get the guys to say, do you want to be a part of something greater than yourself? And if the answer is yes, then show up every day and work hard. And if you do that, then good things are gonna happen. I guarantee you, if you just show up every day to work on time and you work the whole time you're at work, you work as hard as you can, good things are probably going to happen in whatever industry you're in. That really for me is just, those are my only non-negotiable. You kind of talked about, I know I used to have a lot of sayings. I used to have a lot of things on the wall. I used to have a lot of rules. We used to have a whole packet that I handed out. I don't have a player packet anymore. There's no player packet. There's nothing the parents sign. It really is just your kid needs to show up every day on time, and work hard, and then we'll figure out kind of what this is going to look like. And we're going to win some games. We're going to lose some games, maybe. Never gone undefeated, even though I've had a lot of success. That's not really that important. I actually like to find out how are we going to lose. Losing is tells you kind of who you are. A lot of times when you're not successful and you lose, you learn a lot more about yourself than when you win. So, I definitely don't mind the losing process and what that looks like. Once again, not a lot of non-negotiables. Just want you there and want you to care about what you're, because once again, you signed up for this.
Mhm.
My job is to hopefully be a vehicle that helps you get to where you want to go.
That's awesome. I loved your saying there, like the neighborhood football team. I grew up in a small town, Thatcher, Arizona. That's kinda like how our football team was. It was just a bunch of guys. We all lived in the same area, and we just came together, and it was just, kind of like a tradition in the smaller town, right? Like, my dad played there, and my friends' dads played there, and but just carrying on that tradition that had been set by them, and they would say, "Oh, yeah, I remember running that." So, but yeah, and I felt like, and then we'd come down and we would play these teams that were bigger schools, the private schools. Not that they were connected teams or anything, but I always felt like we as a team were more connected in that way. And it sounds like from what I'm hearing, that's kind of what you want to build in your football teams is just a connected group because I'm going to borrow a phrase from Tori Lavelle, like a connected group is a dangerous group. Right. And it doesn't matter the talent discrepancy on the other side. If you're bought in together, you can beat just about anybody. Yeah. So when you're building championship teams, and that I think that's, like you said too, it's good to lose, but the ultimate goal for anyone that's playing in a competitive sport is to ultimately win the championship, right? And you've won two.
hmm
What would you say is a key to a championship team? What did those championship teams that you coached in Mesquite have that you believe have to be a part of every other team that's going to win?
Well, I'm going to start with talent. I mean, I do think you got to have talent. You got to have guys that can make some plays.
Sure.
We had some special guys, and I think that once again, Ty Thompson is thrown out there as a big reason, and he was Player of the Year, and he is a big reason. But we also had guys that could catch. There are a lot of schools that may have a good quarterback, but they don't necessarily have the plethora of receivers that we had. We had some really good, receivers, Jacob Walker and Jordan Walnick, but we we had a whole group of guys that were able to do things. So I do think talent has a lot to do with it. I think also you need to have a catalyst where the guys believe in a player or two on the team that they really believe in. And we had that with and I think Andrew was kind of that, he was able to do everything. Pretty much if we needed something, we were able to go to Andrew. He played middle linebacker, he played receiver, but he made a lot of big plays on both sides of the ball. And hopefully we put him in position to be able to do that. But the truth of the matter is, I think we've put a lot of guys in positions to be able to make plays. That doesn't necessarily mean that they make those plays. Andrew made a lot of big plays when big plays were needed to be made. So, and then I just think it's the core group around those types of guys that we mentioned. You make a call, a screen call, and the running back gets the ball, and there's three linemen out in front of him. Well, if those three guys, those three linemen, all do their jobs, and the running back springs, for a big gain, a lot of guys, a lot of people don't even notice those three linemen out in front of them. They noticed the ball carrier made a big play, and then it looks like a good call. The truth is the three linemen that really made that play work. And I think when you have championship teams, it is those linemen out front. I'm using that as an analogy, but there's a lot of guys that we don't notice.
Mhm.
We don't say their names. We don't notice them. Time goes by, and some guys don't even remember they were on the team. And you don't remember the singular plays that go into seasons or games. It's those moments. And when you really look back at the moments of a championship season, there are a lot of talented guys that are doing things to come up with a big fourth down play. I remember we had in the semifinal game against Cactus. Um, Actually, it was the championship game in 2020, and Riles, who he wasn't our number one wide receiver, starter, played both sides of the ball. Definitely a guy I'm talking about. Maybe a guy that not everybody remembers. But we actually had a fourth down play. It was like 4th and 12. And he had to go across the middle. And he made a catch across the middle and just got walloped. And he held on to the ball. We went on and scored in that drive. That game on a 2-point conversion with no time, 30 seconds left. So really you go back and who's going to remember that play in the third quarter on a fourth down play where Riles made a catch? Well, the truth is, if Riles doesn't make that catch, we don't score on that drive. Cax gets the ball back. Maybe they score. Maybe they extend the lead. So that was a huge play. Their championship teams make those kind of plays throughout their season, definitely in the playoffs. And then a little bit of luck has to come on your side too. I wish it wasn't the case that I get a point to a little luck and it's all, talent or coaching or preparation. Truth of the matter is, most championship seasons, both in 2020 and 2019, I can tell you that, there were a call that went our way that could have gone either way. I'm not saying it went our way because the refs were doing anything, but it just that call in that moment on a 50-50 call went our way. Well, on those two championship seasons, we probably got a couple calls that you can go back to and go, ooh, that was 50-50 and it went our way. What if it didn't? It might not have meant we won a title. It's funny because I actually have a couple of non-title seasons that those 50-50 calls didn't go my way. And at the end of the night, people kind of, oh, the refs. And it's like, no, sometimes they go your way and sometimes they don't. And in the course of a 30-year career, I they've all evened out. They really have all evened out. And so I think, you need a little luck too sometimes on your side, but talent, obviously you gotta have some talent. I look at the best teams and I go to a lot of football games all over definitely the western part of the United States. And usually the teams that win have some pretty talented players.
Sure.
And then there's really more than anything else, I think, there's a want to. You got to want to win. I don't really think the Mesquite team had that until we got to the playoffs, actually, a desire to want to win. Then we got to the playoffs and there was that desire. Round Mountain this year, the 3A champion.
Yeah.
They had a lot of desire. They beat us in the quarters, and then they beat Valley Christian, and then they beat Ben Franklin. Those are three teams with a decent amount of talent. Definitely the last two for sure had significant talent, 1 and 2 seed. Getting to watch Round Valley up close, they definitely did not have the most talent in the 3A. And I don't mean that as a knock. Their guys played incredibly hard. I actually mean it as a compliment. I think they took every ounce of the talent they did have. They played together. They played incredibly close football, and then they played inspired football. And so I think that when you take a championship team, you can usually see inspiration from the stands. I equate Round Valley to that Rocky IV movie where, Rocky didn't go to Russia and, he was booed and, they weren't chanting him. And, then by the way he fought, by round 10 or 11, they're chanting Rocky, Rocky. And I think that watching Round Valley was a lot of that same feel. I didn't have a dog in the fight, for the championship game. I got to see them play Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin's in our league and I got a lot of respect for what Ben Franklin does. So, actually I went in as an observer. I didn't really have a rooting interest, but as you get to the third and fourth quarter of that game, it was hard not to kind of go, dang, this Round Valley team's it's inspirational to watch.
Yeah.
And so I think, you got to have some inspiration. And I do think by the time we got to the playoffs in 19, we were pretty, inspired team. And I thought our 2020 team was a close team. We were a closer team. And I thought we cared about each other. It's funny, we talked about transfers. Rick Lira caught that. He had a monster championship game at wide receiver, and he actually transferred over from Central that year.
Oh.
So, it's funny how I mentioned, not, caring about transfers, but Eric was, probably in my career, Eric has been the biggest, transfer I've ever had. And really, we had a good solid team before Eric got there, but man, when Eric showed up that championship game, he was pretty special that night. But and once again, I think that was an individual effort of inspiration. And then we made some incredible plays that night. So I think there's so many things that go. I mean, I could talk for hours about what it takes to be successful. But it's I think when you see that, it's talent, a little bit of luck that goes into some things. Preparation, obviously, by your coaches, being on the same page, a good plan.
Mm.
My brother putting that defense together. You know, we got a lot of credit for our offense in those title runs, but really, if you look at what our defense did, we kept almost everybody we played under their season average, almost across the board, and that's in the last quite a few years. So it's a lot of things that just come together at the right time.
That's great. Yeah. And I know around actually we played them quite a bit. And so when I saw they were playing Ben Franklin, I was actually just
Mm.
out of spite a little bit,
Yeah, yeah.
but I'm with you. Then you kind of get to that point where you're saying, okay, actually, I can't not root for this team, right? They're playing so hard. I honestly thought Ben Franklin was gonna just walk all over,
Yeah.
but I mean, they fought hard and they earned it and they deserved it. And you mentioned you guys had played them and they beat you guys. What so, and you also mentioned you don't mind losing as a coach, that you feel like that's how you learn as a program, and I agree with that, and so what do you tell your kids, the ones that are leaving? I know Crismon's a newer program. I don't know how many seniors you had on the team last year, but those players that don't get a comeback, that was their last game. What do you tell them, and what do you tell the kids that are coming back, after a loss like that?
Well, I mean, the guys that are always that are leaving their senior year, you know, they did something we've never done. We won a home playoff game this year. We had 7 victories. It is a new school. Obviously, they've had now a couple different coaches in the last few years. So, you know, there was a lot of, you know, for the senior class, it probably was a tumultuous few years of playing football. You know, with just a lot of change. And so I I was proud of the fact that we did what we did this year. For the seniors, by the fact that they had to make some adjustments to another new coach and another way of doing things. And I thought that they did that. And I thought that that paid off. And I thought, you know, I thought we were a quarterfinal team, that we lost 4 games to the 4 teams that made the semifinals. So our 4 losses were technically to the 4 best teams that in the state in our conference. I don't think there's any shame in that. Well, you know, our playoff loss was to the state champion. There's never a little bit of shame in that either. But I think so. I think the seniors, I'm proud of what we were able to do this year. Um, but with that said, I hope that they're rooting for us now. I hope the seniors want us now to go on and use this as a springboard. I would actually be disappointed if our seniors now weren't looking at us going, take this thing another step. So when I look at the talk to the juniors, it's let's take it to the next step.
Mhm.
Let's keep going. Let's not stop. Because really, the truth of the matter is, we were only with this group for a couple months. I got here in June. You know, you start talking June and November. You know, you're really only talking 5 6 months of any type of work with the players.
Mm.
So there was a lot of us trying to figure each other out while we're trying to play games. When you start looking at the juniors and the sophomores and next year's team, that excuse won't be there next year. You know, we're going to have a whole off season together. There's going to be a lot of mental training that's going to go into that. We are definitely going to use the Round Valley loss as a springboard. I've mentioned that already in the weight room numerous times. You know, we played We Are the Champions when we lift a couple times, and I've said, hey, Round Valley sent this down to us. They wanted us to hear what they're listening to. You know, so for me, we're gonna use the loss as a springboard. We didn't play very well that night. We didn't handle ourselves very well. You know, we got beat up pretty good right out of the chute. And we didn't really stay focused on what our mission was. We started to get frustrated and not play the game the right way. You know, so I'm hoping that we can change that. I'm hoping we can win and lose with the same level of playing the game the right way. I'm really proud of in 2015 at Mesa, we won the Sportsmanship of the Year award. You know, in the conference, and that's still an award I take personal. You know, I think that that's one that We were a successful team at Mesa. We won 8 games. We made the quarters, and something Mesa hadn't done for a long time. And so, but we did it the right way. We did it with a class and a dignity, and I don't think anybody would have said we didn't play hard. We hit, we played hard, we played physical, but at the same time, we also want to be the type of team that shakes your hand and tells you did a good job too. When I was a young coach, one of my mentors used to say, the goal is to knock the guy down that you're playing against, but then your goal is to pick him up so he can play the next play. And each football is a game of, 120, 140 plays. The goal is to be the best you can be on the 140 plays, but I also want to compete against somebody who's going to beat me during those 140 plays. They're going to show me what they got. And so for me to be great, I've got to rise to the challenge. And so the only way that we can play the 140 plays and do it well is if, I knock you down, I pick you back up and let's do it again. Then you knock me down, you pick me up and let's do it again. Then over the 140 plays, you find out who was the better person on that particular night. And then you go back on Monday and you start over and you try to continue to get better. And so really your goal is to try to practice on Thanksgiving. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think right now we're going to use this year as a springboard, but we're going to look at the good. We're going to look at a lot of the positive things we did this year, but we're also going to look at the negative. And there was enough to look at there that we need to change some things. We need to get better in some areas, mentally. And I think that was exposed in some games.
And yeah, I watched a few of you guys' games this last year. But one thing I admired about your boys is even in those losses, like you mentioned, they were against some really good teams, and I would say for the most part they fought hard, and I think that's a testament, good thing coming from them. It shows that they want to fight for that coaching staff and for you and your coaches, and so I really admired that about your guys' team. Um, and you mentioned Crismon being a newer program. You were up in Washington before that. What interested you about Crismon that when you decided, okay, I want to come back to Arizona? And what was it about Crismon that you said, yes, that's the one I want to apply for. That's the job I want.
I like the build. I do. I mean, I said I took over a school that was 0-20 in California. Spanish Springs when I took it over, I think was 4-6. Mesa was coming off 7 years of 3-7. Um, I like the build. I like the opportunity to take something that's not necessarily put together yet, and then see what I can do with it. Uh, I think my brother and I are what we've added value, I think, to each program we've been involved with. There's been plus wins in most of the win columns immediately in places we've been. So I think for me, it's the build. I like the build. I like to go places that somebody else hasn't already done it. And so, it's that for me, probably number one. I like the area. I really like the principal. I thought we had chatted a few years before when the school was first built. It wasn't the right timing for me or my family, but she was somebody I really had kept an eye on in terms of what she was doing with the school. I do like the opportunity, if we can get the bond passed and the stadium, that's the blueprints. I think if people in the Queen Creek area around the school really got an opportunity to look at the blueprints of what Crismon is supposed to be built out at, they would really see a special school, a really special environment that they'd want to send their kids to. And so that blueprint is still, we need the bond to pass. But I think if the bond does pass, I think that really could be a really special school, one that is going to attract people from what we have in the building and then on the sports fields. It's the blueprints are really cool. Um, and so I think that there's just kind of that opportunity to see it grow and be a part of that. So I think for me, it wasn't really anything specific. I also think too, Yeah, the truth of the matter is because of how unorthodox I am and because of how we do things, we are, we don't wear really our coaches don't have headsets on. We don't have TVs on the sidelines. We communicate a specific way with the players that really put them more. My headsets are the players. I do I'm not. I don't think that I have some sort of special power that I can see the side from the sidelines any better than any other coach. They put assistant coaches up in the booth. I think Corey and I really look at it more from we want to be able to teach the players how to communicate with us. So they're the communication piece. They're the headsets. So when we have a question, I'm going to ask my middle linebacker. I'm going to ask my quarterback. I'm going to ask the guard. I'm going to ask them what they see, and then we're going to trust what they see. Um, we don't need I don't need a bunch of TVs on the sidelines to then verify what the guard told me. If the guard tells me something, I'm gonna believe what the guard tells me, and I'm gonna hopefully teach them well enough that I don't need all that stuff. And there's gonna be people who go, "Well, why would you not want the technology if you can use it?" Well, I still think communication, everything happens really fast, and I think we can get lost in technology too. The AI programs are fantastic. The fact that you can put some information into AI and it'll give you some cool, it'll spit back something that's um, easy to understand and maybe can write it in a much faster way than I can write a paragraph. But the truth is, I still think there's something. If I have information I want to get out, I still think there's something to be said to me sitting down and writing a paragraph or a letter and formulating it in a way that's my voice. I think when it comes to football, we're getting lost in way too much technology that's not necessary. And so, you talk about Crismon. I think part of the thing about Crismon too is they believe in me. They believe in my process. So when I explain my process, I have people that go, "That sounds good. Let's go win a title." And there are some schools that don't necessarily see it that way. They would have preferred that I change. They would have liked to have seen that I become like everybody else. Because really, if you go to most games, what differentiates coaches? What differentiates schools? If we're all doing everything exactly the same way, um, what differentiates us? Ultimately it ends up being pretty much talent based. And I do think the talent is important. I've said that. But I also want it to be more the players understanding why they're doing what they're doing. And I do spend a lot of time explaining why. Um, and I think that's an important process. So there are people who may like me as a coach, but I don't think I'm necessarily the type of coach they're looking for their program. Because I do think that there's a way that we want to do things, and I don't think that fits everybody's mold. Crisman said, "Let's go to work." So I think the two of us coming together was just a good fit.
That's awesome. The way you're describing the way you coach, that's how I was coached, from a small town that we didn't have these big old monitors. I honestly didn't know high school football teams had monitors on the sideline until I watched the Bash and Hamilton game this year, and I see them big old TVs on the sideline, thinking, "What in the world?" And then my dad was a coach at Thatcher for a while, and I called him like, "What do you know about these?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, we've had a coach that wanted them for a while." But that was what our coaches did. After a play, they'd come and ask, "Hey, what are you seeing here? What are you seeing there?" No headsets, none of that stuff. So the way you're describing that, I can relate to that, and that's really cool.
Well, it's interesting because in Washington, um, the talent is not to the level it is here in Arizona. I don't want to start saying the higher level Arizona teams will be significantly better than the higher. And the coaching here in Arizona is very good. I'm not, it's very good, but the TVs haven't made it up to Washington yet. There's a couple schools that are using some iPads and some things, but really the truth is it really is coaches are doing much more communicating with each other, with the players. Not everybody's running. I think there's also a vibe that the players are missing. Your defensive guys are not, they don't understand the flow of the game because when the offensive guys are out there, the defensive guys are now disconnected, and vice versa. When the defense is out there, the offense is disconnected. To me, there's a flow of the game. There's a momentum that goes with it. There's a vibe and a feel that you can actually feel from the sidelines. And I think when we have everybody go to a bench and they're watching the last series of themselves, I think you're missing the momentum and the vibe of the game. And in Washington, uh, the games had a much greater vibe to them. They had a better feel. I actually think there was actually just as much adjustments happening. You're going to go, well, if you don't have the TVs, you're not making the same level of adjustments. There was a lot of good, solid coaching in Washington where there are a lot of adjustments being made. I just think that it's coming from a different place. And I think we're just getting to the point we're relying too much. I mean, we got drones now that are flying over these games. And I'm not saying, do we want the best product? Do we want to put our kids in the best position to be successful? I do, but at what point are we saying it's just too much? It's just too much, and we're losing the hey, let's just go to the park and play a football game. You practice, we'll practice, and then we'll meet you up and we'll play. Where are we losing some of that? Some of these staffs have 25 guys on the sidelines. We're losing some of the voice. You go, well, that's more voice. No, it's too many voices. It's just we're losing. You look at the pictures from, football coaches from the 80s. Um, you got 5 coaches on a staff of a school that's got 2,000 kids, 6 coaches. Well, that means they were coaching both sides of the ball. We're getting so specialized now. Everything is so, I teach you one thing and only one thing, and I only focus on one thing. I just think we're losing a little bit of that feel, that basketball feel to our game. You come and you feel the vibe and you get the heart racing, and you can feel, the offense is on the 4th and goal from the 7-yard line. And I think that you want to be able to feel those moments. And if we're just staring at a TV screen during the whole game, I think we're missing some of that.
I really like that. All right, and just a couple more questions for you. So with players, now you mentioned it earlier, but I think there's a lot, like you mentioned also, the game has changed a lot, where there's a lot of technology and say from when you first started coaching till now. So what do you tell a player, or how do you help a player who maybe feels overlooked? Maybe they don't feel like they're progressing how they want to progress. They just feel stuck. How do you as a coach relate to them and help them get through those hard times?
Well, for me, I'm able to relate to most players in some regard because in my own playing career, I pretty much had all different facets of what I was able to do. I was a backup. I went a whole season without playing much. Probably my freshman year in college was probably the greatest learning experience I had in terms of learning the sport of football. I never got to play. So I got to learn kind of what that feels like to not play much. I was a late developer. So even during right now, if I get a freshman coming in who's a little on the smaller side or they haven't played a ton of football, they might not yet be where they want to be, but I was in that same spot. I was in their shoes. I was that late developer. Um, but my freshman year, I was 5 foot 95 pounds. I wasn't really playing a ton of football at that point in time. And I was just, but I was still playing as hard as I could, coming to practice every day and working hard. But I was also the all in quarterback. I was first team, and so I did work myself into that. So if you're a really good player in your first team, then I can kind of relate to you too. I've been a good solid player. Um, and everything in between. So I've been disappointed by coaches. I've been lied to by coaches. So I don't lie to the players. That's one thing. Even if it's not going to be something that they don't love what I'm saying in that moment. If they ask me directly, I'm going to give them the truth because I was told the truth by coaches and I was lied to by coaches. And I will tell you that I have a lot more respect for the coaches that told me the truth. So in my career, I'm going to tell you the truth. Um, But really, if you're somewhere right now, if you're an athlete and you're feeling stuck, hopefully we have a lot of different tools we can use for you to kind of feel like we can push you forward. Some of it is genetics. I think that, actually more than most people want to admit is genetics. This whole recruiting in Division 1 and who's the 5 stars and all that stuff. I've had everything. I've had no stars play college all the way to a 5-star player of the year in the state, and be recruited. I will tell you right now, most of the recruits are genetically driven. The college coaches are going to take a guy who's faster than a guy who's slower, bigger than shorter, has the capability to lift more weights, and then be able to transfer that to the field. Right now, if you're 5'8", 165 pounds, and you run a 4'9", 4'8", you're not I don't care how much money you spend. I don't care how many personal trainers you go to. You're probably not ever going to see a Division 1 field. That doesn't mean there's not football out there for you. It just means you're probably not going to ever get the, player of the year designation. And so I think that we also have to figure out what are your goals? What are we trying to get to? And if you say, well, I want to be the greatest football player, whoever lived. Well, there's a genetic aspect to that you already need to be kind of born with a little bit of that, and then we'll develop it from there. And if you are that 5-star, hopefully, I think that I've proven that I could be a part of helping develop that. And if you're somebody who says, I want to play college football, then I actually have a lot more examples of guys who said, I want to play college football, who had no stars, and that we were able to get them placed somewhere, and had a heck of a college career. Guys you'll never even you won't know their names. But if looking back over my 30 years, we've had a ton of guys play college football just at various levels, and then got them a degree, played a little college football, and now they're husbands and fathers, and they're CEOs of companies. It doesn't always have to be the greatest of the great where we all know your name when you're 16 years old. It's not going to happen for everybody. So it's figuring out, where are you? Where do you want to go? And then how can we help you get there? And, in my 30 years doing this, I've been blessed to be given the tools and the opportunities to be able to help a lot of different guys, and put them on the journey to a successful career at some level.
Look, all right, last question for you. What would you tell a parent, anyone? Like when I started this podcast, I wanted it to be, obviously they have a great facility and all that, but I wanted it to, and that facility was built more to help people get unstuck. If we could go into that, started and all. So, but the idea is that everyone's stuck at some point in their life, whether they're an athlete, whether they're a coach, whether they're a weekend warrior, just a regular person. We all get stuck. What would you tell someone that is in that right now is just feeling stuck? How would you help them get out?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you talk about that because actually we're developing a business right now for that. I mean, it's not just being stuck, but Propel Greatness leadership is being developed, for the standpoint of helping, people who want to push forward. And I think there's that propel going forward, and to help them, is really what we're doing. And I think more than anything else, it's just surrounding them with people who believe in them. And I think that, you sometimes being stuck a lot of times is you just really don't have the people yet that are able to tell you this is how we're going to move you forward. And I do think that the coaching aspect to it, just coaching in life, allows you to find people that believe in you and can kind of give you a different way of looking at things. Sometimes we're stuck because we see things one specific way. We haven't really looked at it in all those different avenues. And I think that, I said early on, I had great mentors great mentors, people I could lean on, people I could talk to, people who told me the truth. It wasn't always the answer I wanted to hear. Um, I think when we surround ourselves with people, number one, who are first of all negative. If they're negative, you're never going to get unstuck. If you're being told you can't, you're never really going to push yourself in an area where, especially if you believe in those people, you need to surround yourself with positive people. But I think that the other thing is people who have been there, people who have done it, people who have been a part of varying aspects of success and failure. People who know kind of where you're coming from. I think you got to find those people. You got to find those people who are able to kind of put you on a good path. And for me, I just think that most people are not understanding. There's somebody surrounding them that's going to tell them the truth. That's then also going to do it in a positive way, and then they're going to together look at areas and options to kind of move in a direction that's going to best help them. I think right now, from what I'm seeing, specifically, you said parents, uh, I think everybody wants their kid right away to be the best. That's my boy. That's my kid. Look at my son or my daughter. Look what they're doing. And I think a lot of times it's okay. They're not the best in that moment. We all mature in different levels. We all have different capacities of learning. Not everything happens for us in the moment. Um, it's okay sometimes to be second, third, be the person on the bench sometimes. They go to practice every day and they're a supporter, they're a scout team player. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think we look at that sometimes as saying they're stuck. They're stuck on the bench. Not necessarily. There might be a plan for their life. And being on that bench, maybe when you're 16, is going to create something incredible when you're 23. We don't always know that in the moment. So really, sometimes being stuck is a good thing because you have to find your way to kind of go, okay, what am I going to do now to be more successful? So I think surrounding yourself with people who believe in you, surrounding people who are positive, and then not looking at everything as a negative, where you are as a learning experience. And then you're going to be able to use that. Um, and hopefully at Propel Greatness, what we're putting together is going to tie right into that. My whole goal with Propel Greatness is literally just to help people who may not have anywhere else to go, or people who are surrounded by other great people, but maybe we have a different way of looking at. So I think really we're developing this for the same reason. We're just saying, hey, how can I help you? How can I help you be great? And that's our whole tagline is attack your greatness. We just want you to attack your greatness. And I think if everybody's out there really attacking your greatness, we're going to have a pretty successful society because we all have so many different gifts and talents. We put all those together and we believe in what we're doing. It's going to be pretty special.
I love it. Thank you so much for taking this time out of your break. And so you mentioned Propel Greatness. So how can listeners out there, how can they find it? You said it's in the early stages of it. How can they find it and follow that?
Yeah, actually, we're just developing a website right now. I think it's just gone live in the last week or so, but it's propelgreatnessleadership.com. And we're on Instagram now with propel_greatness. So we're really just launching it. It's really going to be start with athletic directors and coaches and just trying to get out there to kind of help programs as best we can. I think more than anything else, they're doing a great job. I think we're not coming in to do any. We're coming in alongside some groups. We want to be just like, we said, a great staff. You have a great offensive coordinator. If you're a head coach, you have a great strength coach. Well, I just think we want to help you develop the mental side of the game as well, develop the leadership aspect. And we're hoping to put a summit together too this summer where we can bring in young leaders, juniors and seniors in high school, and put some speakers together and, really make it a fun day where we're training that side of it. I have a passion for this. I have a passion for uh, the mental side of it. Why we do what we do. I know we train our bodies on a regular basis, but I think we need to train our minds to believe in our greatness. So I really think that's why Propel Greatness is out there and that's why we're putting it together, because I really believe in the mental side of developing ourselves, and I want to just I want to help. I love doing it in my own schools. Um, I just I just have a heart for the coaches and athletic directors and the players that are out there and the parents that want to see their kids be successful. I just want to be a part of that. I don't want to do it for them. I just want to come alongside and say, "Hey, how can I help?"
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again for coming on. So, if you guys are listening to this and you liked this episode, it resonated with you, please share it with somebody. And if you want to follow, biggest thing I would ask is just share it because, like Coach was saying, I want this to help people. I'm not in it for subscribers. I'm not in it for any of that. I want it to help people. And if this could help you or anyone else, please share it. So, thank you, Coach Hare, for joining us today. I'm Bretton Hunt with Unstuck. And just remember, guys, progress begins with one step. We'll see you next time.